السلام عليكم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. Amma ba'd, we start in the name of Allah the Most High, the one to whom belongs all praise, the one who controls all affairs, the one who gives, the one who takes, glorified and exalted is He. And we send peace and blessings upon the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam and his family and his followers until the end of time. Ameen. Alhamdulillah, Ramadan, we're progressing through the month. And I'm sure, as is customary, the beginning of the month, everyone is excited. And in the middle of the month, everyone is tired. And in the end of the month, everyone kind of tries to roll up their sleeves and finish the jihad as much as they can, inshallah. They try to work hard in the last part of the month. And so here we are kind of on the cusp of entering into that last part of the month. And also in recognition that the middle of the day sometimes is a hard time for people to focus when they're fasting. So today we just want to share some stories from the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and hopefully that will be easier to focus on since they're stories. As we've said many times on this pulpit, the great scholar Imam al-Qarafi rahimahullah ta'ala, he said that لو لم يكن لرسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم معجزة إلا أصحابه لكفوه لإثبات نبوته. That he said that if there was no miracle of the Prophet except for his companions, that would have been sufficient to establish his prophethood sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That would have been enough, because these people were so remarkable. And the transformation that occurred on the hands of the Prophet ﷺ of these people was so remarkable. And it wasn't just one person or two people, but it was an entire generation of people that were really, as we know, the best of all creation after the Prophets. The Prophet ﷺ, he told us that the best generation is the generation that is with him, and then those that follow them, and those that follow them. So the companions then, they're great role models to look up to. The first one that we want to talk about today, and we'll probably spend most of the time on, is a companion named Sa'id ibn Amir radiallahu anhu. Sa'id ibn Amir radiallahu anhu. And the story with Sa'id, it begins in Mecca in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when the disbelievers in Mecca were really giving the Muslims a tough time. And they had gotten their hands on one of the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam named Khubayb. And they had taken him to the outskirts of outside of Mecca. They had taken him to Tan'im, which might be familiar to some people who have been to Umrah, who have been to Hajj, and they've gone to Tan'im if they wanted to make multiple Umrahs, regardless of your position. You might be familiar with that location. And so they took Khubayb out there, and they began to, it was basically a mob. They're taking him out there, and they start to beat on him a little bit, and they're giving him a hard time, and they start to take him to put him up on, like, basically crucify him. And they start to ask him, as they're taking him there, they say, wouldn't you want that Muhammad is in the place that you're in right now? You're going through all of this hardship, but just because you believe in this man, don't you wish that he was in your place? And he said, I wouldn't wish that I'm at home by myself, with my family, comfortable, and even one thorn was to prick the skin of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's like, torture me and beat me and do whatever you want, but don't do it to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he was there, and he was going through all of this. And he asked them, before they were about to raise him onto this cross, they asked him, or the crucifix, they asked him, he said, can I pray 2 rak'ah? And these people, one of the things you realize when you read the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you read the lives of the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you realize these people, for a modern expression, these were epic people. Like, they were really remarkable. So he's taken to this place. He asked them, can I pray 2 rak'ah? They said, okay, fine. So he goes and he takes his time, he gets ready and he prays his 2 rak'ah, and they're observing it. Sa'id is narrating, he's observing, he's not a Muslim at this time. And he's saying he prayed these 2 rak'ah, and they were beautiful 2 rak'ah, they were perfect timing, everything. And he finished and he said salam, and he turned to the people and he told them, if it was not for the fact that I would think, if it wasn't for you thinking that I was afraid to die, I would have made them longer. Right? He says, I just don't want you to think that I'm afraid to die. Otherwise, the 2 rak'ah would have been even longer than these 2 that I prayed right now. But I kept them this way so you don't think that. And then he turns to them, he says, do whatever you're going to do. And they start to torture him, and they basically kill him. Radiallahu anhu. Sa'id, he's watching this instant. And he realizes, wow, he's not a Muslim, but he's seeing what's happening to this man, and he's seeing the perseverance that he has in the face of this horrible tragedy that's befalling him, right? In a worldly sense. Of course, his reward with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala erases all of that. But he's watching it, and he realizes there's something here. And after contemplating it and so on, he actually becomes a Muslim himself. And he goes and he joins the Muslims in Medina, and he lives with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he goes to the battles and he stays with the companions. He's known to be someone who yu'thir in hayat and akhirah, he prefers the hereafter over this life. So this is his standard. This is the standard of the believers in general. Right? They prefer the promise of Allah to the promise of what's in front of them in the material realm. Because the material realm, it's going to come, it's going to go. But the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it will remain. And so he became known for this, and he was a strong person. And really we start to see amazing things from him in the time, especially of Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu. When Umar ibn Khattab is given the khilafah, right, he takes the khilafah, Sa'id, he goes to him. And it's remarkable because when you read these biographies, you see this in multiple different cases. Similar kind of thing plays out. He goes to Umar and he tells him, Ya Umar. He's like, fear Allah. So he's saying, now he's got to give him advice. You're the Khalifa now, I'm going to give you advice. He says, fear Allah. He says, don't fear the people in your relationship with Allah, and fear nothing other than Allah in your relationship with the people. Yeah, this is his first advice to him. Right? If you need to do what you need to do, don't worry about the people. And make sure that you don't forget about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he tells him, whatever you don't want for your family and for yourself, don't want that for the Muslims. And whatever you want for your family and for yourself, then want that for the Muslims. And he's giving them this exhortation, right? And he continues, and then he finishes up, and then Omar, he turns to him, he says, Sa'id, who can do something like this? Right? Who can do this? وَمَنْ يَسْتَطِيعُ ذَلِكَ يَا سَعِيدٌ? He tells him, who can do what you've asked me to do? It's such a high level, right? And what's amazing about this interaction is that you'll see kind of like the back and forth of the mercy and the strength. The mercy and the strength that comes back and forth. So he comes to him, he gives him a really strong advice, right? And then when Omar says, who can do that? His response to that is, رَجُلٌ مِثْلُكَ يَا أَمِيرُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. He says, Amir al-Mu'mineen, someone like you is the one who can do it. He says, the one who the believers, who Allah has given the affair of the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam to him. And someone who fears Allah and so on, he's the one who can do it. You can do it. So he gives him now, after he gave him the really hard advice, he gives him a really nice encouragement, right? And then Omar says, he kind of like pauses, and then he says, Ya Sa'id, ana muwallik hims. Omar makes his decisions fast, right? He knows he needs reliable people. So as soon as he says this to him, he says, Sa'id, I'm making you the governor of Hims in Sham. So Sa'id said, La taftanni. He says, don't make it a trial for me. Don't put me through this trial of being in a position of leadership. Don't put that on my shoulders, right? And then Omar got mad. He told him, you put it on my shoulders and you're not going to help me with it? I'm not leaving you alone until you agree to take it. And he pushes him and he pushes him and he pushes him until he agrees that he's going to take over the governorship of this land, okay, in Hims. They say some time passed after that. And some people came from that town to visit Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu. And when they come to him, he tells them, write down for me the names of your fuqara. Write down for me the names of your ones who are poor, the ones who can, we're going to give them money from the Bayt al-Mal, from the treasury, we're going to give them support. So write down the people who are poor for me. So they write them down and he's reading the list. And he says, who's Sa'id ibn Amir? He's on the list, right? Because when Omar told him, I'm going to send you, and you're going to take over, now should I give you a stipend to help you live? He said, the one that I already get is enough for me. I don't need any more. So the list comes now, and Sa'id ibn Amr is on the list. Omar says, who is this Sa'id ibn Amr? The person said, he's Amiruna. So our Amir, the one who's the ruler of the land, he's the one who's faqir, he's poor. So Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, he started to cry. And he started to cry, and he cried, and he cried, and he took some money, and he put it in a bag, and he gave it to the man. He said, take this to Sa'id, and اقرأ عليه السلام مني. Give him my salam. Give him my salam and give him this bag. Tell him it's for his needs. So they go back and they meet Sa'id and they meet him at his house and they give him the bag of money. And he takes the bag and he opens the bag and he says, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. So his wife hears. She says, Ya Sa'id, what's wrong? Did Amir al-Mu'mineen pass away? Like this is, what's her response? She said, did Amir al-Mu'mineen pass away? He says, no, worse than that. She said, what's wrong? Did a horrible tragedy befall the Muslims? He says, no, worse than that. She said, what could be worse than that? He said, جَاءَتْ إِلَيَّ الدُّنْيَا لِتُفْسِدَ عَلَيَّ آخِرَتِي. He said, the dunya came to me in order to ruin my hereafter. Right? The dunya came to me in order to ruin my hereafter. And she said, إِذَنْ خَلِّصْ مِنْهُ. She said, then get rid of it. And he said, well, she doesn't know what it is, right? Like, she's poor too. If he's on the list of the poor, she's poor too, right? So she's with him in this. She doesn't know what it is. So he tells, will you help me? And she says, yes, I'll help you. And then they take the money and they go and they distribute it to all of the people around the town. Okay? So then some more time passes. And Umar ibn Khattab, because he's a good Amir, he goes and visits the place that's being ruled over, right? So now it can't just be that the people come to him, but he has to go on site and investigate, right? So he goes on site and he comes to the town and he asks the people, what do you think of this Amir that I put over you? And they were known to be a people, by the way, that would complain a lot. People of this Hims, they were known to complain a lot. They were hard to rule over. So he said, what do you think about this Amir? They said, he's okay, but we have 4 complaints. Okay, people, you know already if they can enumerate their complaints, they're already a challenge, right? If they can enumerate their complaints, you know you're in trouble. So like, we have 4 complaints. He said, okay. He says, فَجَمَعْتُ بَيْنَهُمْ وَبَيْنَ سَعِيدٍ وَدَعَوْتُ اللَّهَ تَعَالَى أَنْ لَا يُخَيِّبَ بِي ظَنِّي بِهِ لَا يُخَيِّبَ ظَنِّي بِهِ. He says, I brought them together, the people of the land and Sa'id, to hear the complaint. And I made dua. This to me is such a beautiful part of the story. He said, I made dua to Allah that my good opinion of this man would not be ruined. Saeed. Right? Because and he says, لِأَنِّي كُنْتُ كَثِيرَ الثِّقَةِ بِهِ. He says, I had a lot of trust in him. And so I made dua that this trust wouldn't be lost. So I brought them together and I told them, what's your complaint? So they said, our first complaint is that he doesn't come out until later in the day, like in the morning. He doesn't come out early in the morning, he comes out late in the morning. We don't see him until late in the morning. So he turns to Saeed, he said, what do you have to say to this? And he says, Wallahi Amir al-Mu'mineen, I swear by Allah, that I don't like to talk about these kind of things. But seeing as how this is the situation and I have no choice, this is the situation. Here's what it is. Tells him what happened. He says, we're poor, we don't have a servant. So in order for me, every single morning, what I do is I get up and I prepare the flour. I have to get the wheat and the stuff and I have to grind it and I have to prepare the flour and I have to make it and prepare it and I have to make the bread so that my family can eat for the day. And then after I do that, I come out. So he's like, okay, what's number two? Let me see this answer. This is why he's late in the morning to come out. Number two, he said, what's your other issue? They said, well, we don't see him at nighttime. I mean, look at these people, right? He doesn't come out early enough in the morning and we don't get to see him at night. I mean, they're looking for anything. He said, what's the second problem? We don't see him at night. He says, okay, Saeed, what's your answer? He says, I don't like to say it, but since I'm in this situation, this is the state of the believer, right? The believer, it's between me and Allah. I don't want to put everything out there with everyone. So he says, but since I have to give an answer, the answer is that I made that the daytime is for them and the nighttime is for Allah. That's my breakdown. And this was something you'd see amongst many people. Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu was the same. The daytime was the affair of the Muslims and the nighttime was for Allah. Umar ibn Abdul Aziz radiallahu anhu was the same. The daytime was for the Muslims, the nighttime was for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he said, I gave this breakdown. Right? This is why this has happened. They don't see me at night. If people can move in, it'd be great to make room because I know it's busy in Ramadan. Barakallahu feekum. They said, what's your third complaint? They said, our third complaint is that once a month, we don't see him at all until nighttime. Like until late in the day. It's like, okay, once a month. I mean, one day off. One day off in the month and they're complaining. Once a month, we don't see him at all until late in the evening. So he said, what's your answer? He said, as I mentioned, we don't have a servant. And he said, and I only have one pair of clothes. I only have one pair of clothes. So once a month, I have to take the time to wash my clothes and then to hang it up to dry in the house. And when I'm hanging it up and waiting for it to dry, obviously I can't go out because I only have one pair of clothes. And then by the end of the day, it dries and I put it on and then I go out at the end. That's why they don't see me. She's like, okay, alhamdulillah. So what's your fourth complaint? They said, our fourth complaint is sometimes we're sitting in his gathering and he'll just pass out for no reason that we know of. He just faints. He's like, okay, Saeed, what's the situation? Saeed says, sometimes when I'm sitting with them, I remember what I saw from Khubayb, from the beginning of the story. I remember what I saw to Khubayb and the way they tortured him and the way they mutilated his body and everything else when I was not a Muslim. And I saw all of that and I didn't do anything to help him. And I get worried that Allah will take me to task for that. And so when that happens, I faint. So Umar ibn Khattab said, Alhamdulillahi alladhi lam yukhayyab bi dhanni bi. He says, Alhamdulillah, the one who preserved my opinion of him. He kept him strong, right? This is Saeed. This is what he died upon, radiyallahu anh. This is the way that he lived his life. Then after that incident, they tried to give him money again. Right? After this, tried to give him some more money. And this time the wife was happy. She's like, oh, this money came, maybe we can use it to hire some help, to get some assistance around the house and so on and so forth. He said, I have a better idea. She said, what's that? He said, we give it back to the one who gave it to us even though we need it more. These people, right? We give it back to the one who gave it to us even though we need it more. And she said, what do you mean? He said, we give it as a loan to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the reward of it will come in the hereafter. And she said, you're right. Then he said, will you help me? And she said, I'll help you. And they went and they gave it out and distributed it. And this is the way that they lived their life. Radiyallahu an. Now these are great, great people. This is one example of these people. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us a glimpse from who they were and allow us to live by a glimpse of what they were. Ameen. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله ما بعد أوصيكم عباد الله أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله. I remind myself and everyone to have taqwa in all affairs. So that's Sa'id ibn Amir radiallahu an. This is one of an entire generation of people. The other one that comes to mind right now is a companion named Abdullah ibn Hudhafa radiallahu ta'ala an. Also less known, Abdullah ibn Hudhafa. And he has some really serious mawaqif. I don't know how to properly translate. I've struggled for a long time to properly translate this word to Arabic or to English and to give it its meaning. Right? He has some serious stances that he takes with people. The first of them was that he was sent to the king of Persia, to Kisra. He was sent to the king of Persia. I'm not going to spend that much time on this one because we don't have that much time, and I want to talk about the other one. But essentially, one of the interesting things that happened there is that when the Prophet ﷺ is choosing these people, they're going to take these letters towards the end of his life. They're going to take these letters to the other empires and warn them about Islam and invite them to Islam. So he knows this is a dangerous job. So he called the people, he asked them who can do this, and different companions, they volunteered to do it, and they went. And Abdullah was the one who was going to Persia. So he goes to Persia by himself, and he comes in, and he gets a court with the emperor, or the king, or whatever, Kisra. And they go to take the servant, to take the letter from him, to give it to Kisra. And he says no. The Prophet ﷺ commanded me to deliver this by hand to him, and I am not the one to disobey the command of the Prophet ﷺ. Said he comes into the gathering having traveled this travel without anything special. Said alayhi thiyab al-badu, like he's wearing the clothes of the Arab. It's very simple. He's not like ordained, glorified to go into the presence of this ruler. He just comes in, he says, this is my job, I deliver it. I'm not the one that's going to disobey the Prophet ﷺ. So he says, okay, and he gives it to him. They read it. It says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Min Muhammadan Rasulillah ila Kisra azimi Faris. Aslim taslim. Right? This is the letter. It says, from the Prophet, from Muhammad, the messenger of God, to the ruler of Persia. Starts with Bismillah. Become a Muslim, find safety, basically. You'll be okay. So the emperor, of course, he gets really angry and he rips it up. And he sends him out of his court. So he's like, after he's out of his court, he's like, well, I did what I was supposed to do. So he goes home. Goes all the way back to Medina, tells the Prophet ﷺ what happened. The Prophet just looks at him, because sometimes we think of the Prophet only as mercy. He was mercy, but sometimes that mercy is active mercy. Right? Sometimes it's powerful mercy. So he says that, he tells the Prophet what happened. He says, Mazzaqallahu mulka. He says, depending on how you translate it, but Allah will destroy His kingdom. It's done. And that came to pass, right? And there's other details to it, but he was strong in his delivering of it. The second one that happens, he ends up in front of the emperor of the Byzantine Empire, the Romans of the time. Ends up in front of him, and there's Muslims that have been taken prisoner and so on and so forth, and they bring Abdullah forward. They say, this is now in the time of Umar radiallahu anh. And they say, this is from the companions of the Prophet, of Muhammad, and they want to talk to him. So the emperor, he tells them, listen, I'll make a deal with you. You become a Christian, and I'll let you go. So Abdullah looks at him and he says, it's more beloved to me to die 1,000 deaths than to do what you just asked me to do. And all the Muslims are held captive and everything. It's not like a simple situation, right? So they tie him up and they start to get him ready to torture him and stuff, and they bring people, they bring the boiling oil and stuff close to his head. They say, become a Christian, we'll let you go. He says, no. He says, bring it to his other. No. He said, they bring out some of the Muslim prisoners and they kill one of them in front of him. He tells them, become a Christian, I'll let you go. He says, no. They kill a second one in front of him. He says, no, I'm not going to do it, right? And then they go to throw him into the thing and he starts crying. So they're like, okay, bring him down. Let's ask him again. So they bring him down. They ask him again. He said, do you want to become a Christian? He says, no. And then they say, why are you crying then? He says, I'm crying because you put me right now on the brinks of martyrdom, and I wished I had 1,000 lives so that I could be there again and again and again and again. Right, this was his answer. The emperor looks at him and he decides to change his perspective now, changes his approach. He says, how about if you kiss my head, I'll release you. Now, think to yourself, what would the average person do in this kind of situation? right? Average person will probably be like, all right, I'll kiss his forehead and everything will be fine. I did what I needed to do for myself. I go home. He told him, how about you kiss my head and I'll let you go? And he said, وَجَمِيعَ أَسْرَى الْمُسْلِمِينَ. He said, and all of the Muslims. He negotiated with him. He said, and all of the Muslim prisoners, you have to let them go too. And he said, okay. And then he said, then I thought to myself, هَذَا عَدُوَ اللَّهِ. He says, I thought to myself, this is the enemy of God. And this and this and this and this. But he's going to let all of the Muslims go and let me go? Like maybe it's not a bad deal, right? It's not this like zero-sum crazy activism, right? It's like maybe I can bargain with this. So he kisses him in his head and he lets them all go back to Medina. So all of these Muslim prisoners, now they come back to Medina and they come to Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu, and Umar asks them what happened, what's the situation, so on, and they tell them the whole story. And Umar's sitting there listening to the story. And then after he heard the whole story, he looked at him and he said, حَقٌ عَلَى كُلِّ مُسْلِمٍ أَنْ يُقَبِّلَ رَأْسَ عَبْدَ اللَّهِ وَأَنَا أَبْدَأُ بِهِ. And he got up and he kissed his head. He said, it's a right upon every single Muslim to kiss the head of Abdullah ibn Hudhafa, and I'm going to be the first one who does it. And he stood up and he kissed him on his head. Radiyallahu an. And these people, I mean, تَشَبَّهُ بِالْقَوْمِ إِن لَمْ تَكُونُوا مِثْلَهُمُ فَإِنَّ التَّشَبُّهَ بِالْكِرَامِ فَلَاحُ. The poet said, try to be like the people, try to imitate the people, even if you're not from them. Because imitating the good people in itself is a means of success. Now may Allah help us to follow the way of these beautiful people who came before us. Allah, we ask you to forgive us of our sins and our shortcomings. Allah, forgive us of our sins and our shortcomings, accept from us our deeds, accept from us our prayers, our fasting, our charity in this month. Make us go into the end of this month with strength, Ya Allah. Allah, give us the energy to worship you in the end of this month and help us to come out of the middle of it and to finish it strong. We ask you, Allah, to give food to those who are hungry, to give shelter to those who are shelterless, to give victory to those who are oppressed, to give aid to those who are suffering. Allahumma اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وإسرافنا في أمرنا وثبت أقدامنا. اللهم كن معنا ولا تكن علينا وانصر إخواننا المستضعفين في كل مكان. افتح عليهم يا فتاح يا عليم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وعملا صالحا. اللهم تقبل منا صيامنا وقيامنا وصدقاتنا وقراءتنا للقرآن الكريم. يا رب كن معنا ووفقنا إلى ما تحبه وترضى. اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا وأقيموا الصلاة.